Hey there, Blazer fans. Welcome to episode 1 of The Dragon's Den, a podcast for those that bleed green and gold. Today I've got special guest Mo Finley, former UAB basketball guard from 1999 to 2004. One of the most iconic moments in school history, and you might have noticed the episode is a little long today, and but I promise you, you're really going to enjoy every minute of it. Mo is a tremendous guy. He lets you know a lot about him, and he's not afraid to let you know a lot about him. And he's one of the most down-to-earth guys you'll ever meet, and I really hope you enjoy it. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and fade into episode 1. Hope you enjoy. All right, so I've got former UAB basketball guard Mo Finley here. Mo played for the Blazers from 1999 to 2004, and Mo, I kind of want to do something, and I kind of want to I want to try something out and see if it sticks for my future podcast. So I'm going to do my best Derek Scudder impersonation. Is that all right?
Yeah, go for it, man. It's your show.
All right. At guard, a 5'11 senior from Lafayette, Alabama, number 10, Mo Finley.
That's pretty close, man. You should make sure we'll tag him in this. Make sure you send it to him. Let him know you're paying homage to him.
Yeah, I definitely will. I love Derek. I worked with him a couple of times when I was doing my internship with UAB Athletics, and he's a great guy. So
yeah, I'll take a really quick funny thing. I was my wife and I, we went down to Regents Field to a game, I guess last summer, or whatever, maybe 2 summers, I can't remember. And so like I kept hearing the announcement, like, I know that voice. I know him.
Yeah.
And I realized it was him.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife's like, you don't know him. I said, I've heard that man say my name. I know it's him. And he got in touch with him and said hello. And then I saw him again down at the news station, maybe last year as well. So awesome dude, great voice, man. Great.
Yeah, I love his voice. He's an institution in Birmingham. I guess Birmingham, PA, and he's just got one of the most recognizable voices to me, at least. He's everywhere, it seems like. So.
Oh yeah.
But I'll go ahead and get into your some of your stats. Talk about some of your stats that you had while you were at UAB. You were the team scoring leader in the 2002 and 2003 season and the 03-04 season. 623 points in 02-03, averaging 18.3 points per game. 402 points in your senior year, yeah, and 13.9 points per game. 6th all-time on the scoring list at UAB with 1,539 points. 8th all-time in field goals made. 3rd all-time in three-pointers made. Tied for 5th in all-time steals. 2nd team all-conference 2002-2003. All-tournament team in 2003. And the list goes on and on. I could keep going, but I mean we'd be here all night. But and one of the bigger ones of note, second team selection by the National Association of Basketball Coaches in 03-04, your senior year. What does it feel like to be in the history books with UAB?
You didn't mention field goals attempted. That would be the first thing my teammates would probably laugh about. I take a lot of pride in being a part of a pretty unique fraternity. I think anytime you get a chance to participate in college athletics, that's a really cool thing. And so for me, from a stats standpoint, I mean, that's cool, obviously, but I think the most important part is just having an opportunity to be with those guys and to be a part of those teams. And that means a lot to me, man.
Yeah. I mean, you couldn't say it any better. One of the games I really wanted to talk to you about was, I got a few and of course I know my listeners all really got a few games that they already have circled in their minds that they want to know about. But I've got a few games that I wanted to bring up. I look back in the record books and just some of your better performances while you were at UAB. 1999, you had a 32-point game against Fresno State your freshman year. So what was that like?
That 30-point game, That one, it's probably one of my favorite games of all time at UAB because uh, up until that point, I hadn't really done a ton on the court, and so getting an opportunity to play down at the Civic Center where I had just recently graduated from high school a few months back, and so for me that was a really cool deal just to kind of go back into that building where I essentially earned my scholarship, or at least when I first got noticed by UAB.
Yeah.
And the weird thing is, I wasn't actually supposed to play a whole lot. Our starting point guard got hurt. A guy named Leandrew Bass was hurt.
Hmm.
And so my roommate, a guy named Tony Johnson, he was from Kentucky. He was sort of the backup point guard. Eric Holmes played backup point guard as well, but he was a starting two slash backup point. And so I wasn't anticipating playing a ton of minutes. But once I got in the game and made a couple of shots, Coach Bartow, he kind of just let me go and left me alone. And, it was a really, really fun afternoon for me and my teammates and my family. Good team. We played a very good Fresno State team. They had tons of guys that were really talented players. Gordon Alexander, I want to say he was maybe the 13th or 14th pick of the draft that year. Uh, Larry Abney, Terrence Roberson, they had some really good players. And so, plus with, Coach Tark, man, that's someone you grew up
Yeah.
seeing on TV your whole life. To have a chance to go out there and compete against a team that he's coached or a team that he was coaching, excuse me, like that was pretty cool. Again, as a freshman, very, very cool.
Awesome. A 31-point performance against Texas A&M Corpus Christi back in 2002. What do you remember about that game?
Not a lot.
Not a lot.
Oh, you know what? I remember being at home,
Hmm.
and I remember none of us really knowing where Corpus Christi was. We had never heard of it, and so during that night, I mean, it was just a really relaxed environment. It was at home, and anytime you're at home, you feel pretty confident. And so that night was one of the nights that I was able to come out and make a few shots at home. Got going early, and so it was a good night. Well, my teammates probably found me more times than they should have, but I'll take
So, coming out of Lafayette High School, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Oh, I wouldn't let you mispronounce Lafayette. Don't worry.
Coming out of Lafayette High School, what made you choose UAB?
Well, UAB chose me. I did not have any offers out of high school. After I mentioned earlier, we made my high school team. We made it to the Final Four state tournament. So prior to that, I didn't have any offers at all. And so my plan was to go and play at Meridian Community College with my brother-in-law. He was the head coach there at the time. So that was my plan. I figured worst case scenario, I'll go to JUCO and just sort of prove my worth. And so, but after the Final Four, the next week UAB came down and they offered, and Murray State reached out as well. But UAB was I knew about UAB because Stanley Jackson had played at UAB. I'd watched them on TV. Uh, I guess in the San Juan Puerto Rico shootout the year before, and so I was familiar with UAB. Kids from my hometown went to basketball camp at UAB before, so it was not. It was very familiar to me. So once they offered, I had never seen the campus. I agreed to come, and I had never been on campus before because I already knew the history, and I was excited about the opportunity to play close to home in a good conference.
Well, just on another note, but what would you say about the growth of UAB from the time that you were there until now?
Stuff always gets better when you leave, man. So it's amazing to ride near campus or for you to look over, for example, just something small like Belgium. When we were in
Mhm.
school, Belgium was just a gym. It was hot, uncomfortable, and now you go over. It's a training room. They have whirlpools everywhere. They have a huge weight room and facility for the other athletes to use. And so that was really impressive. The year I left, that was I want to say the first year, maybe the first or second year they had the new rec center.
Yeah.
And so when I got back into town, I had actually reached out to a guy about getting a membership. But at the
Hmm.
time, they wanted you to, come. They wanted you to pay for a year's membership. But I was only here a couple of months. I was like, man, it's a great facility, and I can't even use it for the 3 months I'm here.
You're Mo
Uh,
Finley, and you can't even get a membership with the rec center.
well,
Come on.
you know what? He told me. I said, well, is there any way I can come in? Like he's like, no, you got to get a membership. You got to pay for the year. And I was like, man, I can't use a year's membership. I'm on the other side of the world for 9 months. So But that was real. I thought that was a really nice place. And now, of course, now they've closed campus off, man. It looks amazing. The things they're able to do with hoops on the asphalt, the things that they do outside prior to the start of basketball season, just more of a traditional campus, which is something that I did not get a chance to experience as a college student. And so I would imagine it's really, really a fun experience now for everybody who attends.
Awesome. What do you remember most about your time while you were at UAB?
What do I remember most? You know what? I remember walking a lot on campus. I lived in the dorms the entire time, and so that for me, I didn't have a car until my senior year, so we walked a lot to practice, to the cafeteria, to everywhere, to class, and so some of it's really strange how you remember a lot of the fun times or the most fun times are just times where you're just walking to class and kind of hanging out and seeing your teammates or seeing your friends as they're crossing the street to Campbell Hall or someone. So that's what I remember the most, just kind of walking around on campus and getting a chance to interact with everybody in that way.
Okay. On a basketball note, we'll transition to the hardwood here. But what was the toughest environment you ever played in?
The toughest environment, I would have to say, I would have to say Tulane or Southern Miss.
Really?
Yeah, because in no shape or form a knock on Tulane or Southern Miss, but the crowds weren't always great.
Mm-hmm.
And the arena, it just really felt hard to get excited. I don't know. I mean, we weren't obviously we weren't UCLA, and so maybe
Mm-hmm.
fans didn't have a desire to see us either in those places. And so the places were usually really empty, and it was just really really difficult to get going. The energy was always kind of low in the building, and I lost some. I don't know if I ever won at Tulane. I'd have to go back and look. I don't think I ever won a game in New Orleans.
That's it's interesting that you would say that because my dad and I have always talked about how when Tulane was in Conference USA, we did say that it was. I don't know if it was just like the voodoo magic down there in New Orleans or something, but we always said that New Orleans or that Tulane was always just that one place that we never had a great game at, or we always struggled there for some reason. Tulane
Yeah.
could have been, could have won one game that entire season, but we always seemed to have problems down there.
Tell you,
Um,
man, it could be. I don't know. It could be the new Death Valley if they made it that way. 'Cause it's hard. But they'll have to figure out a way to make their guys get up for it, and everybody else keep the environment the same for everybody else because it was very very difficult
really.
for me as a player. The only person that liked going to New Orleans was probably Squeaky. Squeaky enjoyed it when we went down. Tulane and Southern Miss were probably two of the toughest environments I've ever played in. My freshman year, I had a pair of gold shoes, and obviously as a freshman, you can't really wear those type of shoes if you're not the starter. But I had on, I had a pair of gold shoes, and a fan at South Florida screamed out, "Hey Finley, you can't wear those shoes and sit on the bench." And I remember laughing at him. I was like, you know what? He's right. I probably should change, but my pride, I'm not going to change. I'll keep them on anyway. But yeah, those were the two tough environments, man. The other places were easy to get up for. Memphis, when you go to Memphis, Louisville, you got tons of fans screaming at you. Cincinnati, like those places were fun to play, and I don't ever remember being intimidated in those places. I just remember being really excited, ready to go out and compete. And of course, we were always ready to compete. But I will say it was a much different atmosphere, a different atmosphere in New Orleans and in Hattiesburg.
That's a different take than I was expecting, but
Where did you? I guess what on our list, what do you think would be the toughest?
UAB has played in some huge, like, historic arenas over
Right.
time, and I've had the pleasure of going to some of them. But I just based on what I was expecting like maybe I thought maybe an NCAA tournament game maybe, but even then the crowds are kind of 50-50, and people generally root for the smaller team, and so I thought maybe, but like I thought for sure it had to have been like Memphis or an SEC team that we went to or something, but I was not expecting Tulane or Southern Miss
Man,
at
those were the
all.
places that were. don't know. They were the worst for me, man. And I don't know. The other places, again, like I said, at Memphis, I mean, going in, you're not gonna get calls. The crowds are gonna be good.
Hmm.
So there's a different, sort of attitude or approach, and you try to approach every game the exact same way, but the energy levels are different in different places, and so that was that. I just remember being hard, and like I said, we played some. I don't know if I ever won at Tulane, but I remember going into losing in double overtime at Southern Miss, and we played well. And they just did a good job.
I think I
Uh,
remember that game.
yeah, they did a good job of beating us.
Yeah. What was another game that you remember so well that no one really talks about?
A game that I remember really well that no one talks about.
Like,
Let's,
everybody mentions the
a game that I played well in or poorly.
either one, or one that you enjoyed just so much. Like, people might talk about the conference tournament games or the NCAA tournament games, but what was just one game where you had fun or you did really well, and that was just one that you remember that no one really ever seems to talk about?
Um, I think maybe my senior year when we beat Marquette at home.
Okay.
Marquette at home, my senior year, that was a really fun game. Um, Also, the Marquette game in the conference tournament my junior year, that was a fun game. Those two games stick out. Anytime we played, one of the better teams of Conference USA or one of the top tier teams, I think those games always meant a little more because you knew
Hmm.
lots of eyes all over the country were on you because of the locations and most like you're playing teams in the South. I mean, those are kind of local, but when you go and play Marquette, you go play St. Louis, like
Hmm.
those are teams that here traditionally people don't really follow, and so
Yeah.
like those games were pretty fun to me.
That was one game that I had circled on my list of games I really wanted to talk to you about. And I'll go ahead and mention the first one. March 3rd of '03, we play number 10 Marquette, and we lost 98-87. But 12 days later, we play them in the conference tournament. They're ranked number 8, and we beat them. What was the general atmosphere like in that game? I know Eric Bush had a big game, and you also had a great game too. 23 points. What was going through and what was going through your mind that game? What was the general atmosphere like?
Well, I think the first time when they beat us earlier in the month, I remember thinking we played well, but they're at home, and you know Wade is obviously just an amazing player, an amazing talent, a Hall of Fame guy. And so even then, like he still got every call, and so like it was. I remember on the court when we played them there, I mentioned to him, I said, "Man, are they gonna let us get close?" I said, "We're not even close to you, and they're calling foul." And he to his credit, he didn't say one word. He didn't say a word. But I just remember thinking after that, I said, you know what? Like we played well. I think if we get them in the right environment, and we always did a good job of forcing turnovers against Marquette. So I felt like if we could get them on a neutral site, neutral like once we played them, I didn't think uh, that we would have as much trouble with them in the conference tournament, or if we played them later, as we had with them at their place.
Yeah. So, like I said, 98-87 loss. 12 days later, you beat them 83-76. For those of you listening and didn't know this, and I didn't know this even then, they were coached by now Georgia head coach Tom Crean, and who coached Indiana for a while. And you scored 23 points. You helped force, that
Yeah, I didn't do it.
that guy.
I did not do that by
What,
myself.
that guy, Dwayne Wade, you said, I think that was his name. You helped force 10 turnovers that Dwayne Wade had in that game, including an intercepted pass late in the game that Dwayne Wade was passing to someone else, and you stole the ball and got fouled and helped run out the clock. What was it finally like just to kind of seal that game out and know that you beat them and that you were going to advance?
I remember thinking that during the game, because it started off really well,
Hmm.
and I just thought like I think we can keep the pressure on them. We can turn them over a little bit. Again, like we had always kind of turned them over a pretty good bit. And with Coach Anderson, like the tournaments, once you start a conference tournament, it's just hard, especially when you don't play that first game.
Hmm.
If another team comes in and they've been playing and they're kind of got the butterflies out, so to speak. It's hard to come out and go ahead and put your foot on the on the floor on the throttle and go full speed out. And it's hard, it kind of because you're still kind of feeling your way out. Because tournament is different than the regular season because you got another game coming. And of course, they knew they had the
Yeah.
NCAA tournament coming. Uh, but for us, it's win or go home. And so there's a different attitude with us. Plus, we've already had got one game under our belt. So for us, I mean, I felt really good, really confident. And Bush, Eric Bush, man, he is I love Eric Bush. He is one of my favorite teammates of all time. And so over the course of that week, man, he just he carried us, and every time there was a play to be made, he made it, whether it was defensively, offensively. And the next night against St. Louis, I mean, he was even better the next night. And so with all of that going for us, and again, with them having not had a game in the beginning, I thought we caught them at the right time. And obviously, I mean, they went on to the Final Four, so they were obviously a really good team. But we played well that night, and we were able to come out with a win.
If you could go back and change the result of one game, what would it be?
Kansas.
I wasn't going to.
Outside of Kansas?
I didn't want to talk about that one, but you can go ahead and talk about it.
Yeah, I will. I mean, one game isn't fair because you remember the losses much. You hold on to those a lot longer than you do the wins. So for me, I think Kansas definitely is number one on that list. We did not play well. They did a really good job. I mean, they were huge. They were big. They played fast, just like we played. A couple of years ago, I actually got a chance to talk to Coach Self, and one of their assistant coaches, and they mentioned to me that prior to playing us, they practiced 7-on-5, 8-on-5 to try to simulate what we were going to do. And they were just, I mean, they came out and they just hit us in the mouth. And I remember in the first half, I kind of got a little breakaway, a little layup, and a guy was running past me, and it was a layup, but it wasn't just a wide open layup. And it's one of the plays you got to make if you're gonna win. You're gonna beat good teams, you got to make it. And I remember sort of laying it up, and I looked back, and the ball just kind of hung on the lip of the rim, and it rolled off. And I remember jogging back down the court, thinking it's gonna be a long day. When that doesn't go in, it's gonna be a long day. And sure enough, it was absolutely brutal. I mean, they were as good as you could imagine.
If you could go back and relive one game, what would it be?
If I could go back and relive one, I think maybe Cincinnati at home my senior year.
Okay.
The fans, they got a chance. That was our sort of a signature win for us.
Yeah.
And so the fans rushed the court. It just felt like everyone in the building was involved. And so for me, I think that was just a really cool deal that everyone got. I mean, of course, rushing the court. In all honesty, we should have beat them. I mean, not to sound like a jerk, but I think we had a really good team. They had a good team. We were at home, and I think we did a good job. So we should have won. I think Squeaky took maybe 3 charges that night. He took a bunch of charges against Chad Moore, who was a local kid, and so we wanted. We wanted to play well. Plus, the year prior, we went up there to their place, and we got handled a little bit. Game was close, and then it got into a scuffle, and so we really wanted to beat them. And once we did, I mean, like I said, the fans, everyone, students. I remember a football player coming rushing the court and picking me up, and so and I looked down, and it was like, yeah, I'll go with it. Like, yeah. But I remember seeing Daryl Hackney in the stands. Like everyone was just so excited and so involved. So I think that's a really good one to relive because, like I said, everyone was there.
Okay, I can respect that. I like that. I like that one. If I recall correctly, that might have been the game. I don't remember if I was there for that game. I remember seeing the video of it now. Of course, you go back on all these. You go back on YouTube or any of the social media platforms and you see highlights of that game. But I remember, and I was really young at the time. I was probably not even any older than 10. But I remember seeing it was so crowded at the game that fans were sitting on the stairs in Bartow Arena. It was so packed, and I love the environment when Bartow Arena is just packed to the roof. Like the environment doesn't get any better.
Right.
And I know some college basketball coaches like John Calipari, and I'm sorry UAB listeners for having to hear that name, but but he was even saying I remember hearing a quote from him, and he was talking about how Bartow was one of the toughest environments that he's ever had to coach in, and it's just you know it's just the way it's built, and the roof is not that high up, so the sound has nowhere to go, and it's a great environment to. I can only imagine what it's like as a player, but as a fan, I can say that it's an awesome environment when it's full.
When it's right, it's fun. It is a fun place to play.
What team did you hate the most?
What team that I hate the most? uh, that was on our schedule.
Yeah, or anybody, whatever you want to say.
Well, I guess probably on our schedule, I probably dislike Memphis the most. Uh, Cincinnati was a close second. I dislike I dislike them a little more than everyone else because I think again, like I mentioned at Memphis, you knew you weren't going to get any calls.
Hmm.
You knew they were gonna, it was that type of environment where if it's close, it's going their way. And I get it, I understand, but didn't make it okay at the time.
Yeah.
So I think Memphis is probably number one. Cincinnati was those guys had attitude,
Hmm.
like you would expect at a premier program like Cincinnati. And so I mean it was a fun environment to play, and it was fun to go and play against them. But those are the two teams I probably disliked the most that were on our schedule, and everyone else that wasn't green and gold, I disliked them equally. So I guess that's fair.
Who was your go-to guy on the court while you were at UAB?
Sydney Ball. Sydney Ball was my roommate throughout my time at UAB, and so Sydney and we're like brothers. And it sounds corny, but like there was no one on the court. Sydney Ball, my first couple of years, David Walker.
Hmm.
Uh, my freshman year, Torrey Ward because he was a senior,
Yeah.
and Bill Armstrong was a guy that really helped me a lot when I first got to UAB. Just sort of welcomed me in, and those were the guys that I looked to. Not so much for the basketball part of it, but just anytime you had any concern or issue, you're shooting poorly, you go to someone who can encourage you, or you're
Mhm.
having trouble, you know, getting this message across to another teammate. I mean, those are the guys out. They were always my sounding boards and stuff. So those are the guys I think I went to on the court the most. And when it was a basketball related issue, when Bush was there, Eric Bush handled everything basketball related, man, because he's the best. And so Eric Bush was my guy then for sure.
Do you still talk to any of the? I mean, I'm sure
Yeah,
you do. He
I
still
still
talk.
talk to everybody. I talk to Sydney literally probably once or twice every week. I talk to David Walker. David Walker, we usually talk, a few times, maybe once or twice a month. Every couple of months we talk just to kind of touch base, make sure we're okay. Anthony Johnson, we talk whenever I can get him on the phone. Man, he's like, it's probably easier for you to get, I don't know, the Queen of England on the phone than Tony Johnson. Man. Not answer the phone for nothing. Um, but Squeaky and I, we stay in touch, via Instagram, and Ronell and Donnell, those guys, we're always commenting on each other's pictures and stuff. And so I think we're all fairly close, man. I think you can appreciate each other a lot more now that basketball, the game has sort of passed all of us by. And so you look back to those guys because those are the things that last. Like in the beginning, your game is what, you're focused on. But now the relationships that remain, like that's the thing that you cling to.
Okay.
And so I think we all do a pretty good job. Richard Jones, Derek Broom,
Hmm.
a lot of those guys from my Sweet 16 team, I still keep in touch with, and I still try to connect with whenever I can.
Awesome. That's awesome. So you played under Coach Murray Bartow and you played under Coach Mike Anderson. What were they like as a coach and a person to you?
I mean, they were a little different as coaches. I
Hmm.
think Coach Anderson gave you a little more freedom,
Hmm.
and then he would sort of take your freedom away based on what you did. Coach Barstow, he would watch you first, and then he would give you freedom as you earn as you earn it a
Mm.
little bit. And so I played for him at different stages of my career. So there's no way that like freshman Mo Finley may not have been able to do with Coach Anderson any more than he did with Coach Bartow.
Hmm.
But maybe senior Mo Finley gets to do a little more with Coach Bartow. So, I mean, it was, they were different in terms of that. But I think the most important thing that they both did that I could really appreciate is that they genuinely cared about the players. And so both of those men are mentors to me. And so I still keep in touch with them, Coach Bartow especially. And Coach Anderson, when he comes into town, he calls us and, we came in, I guess, a few months ago, but of course, with Corona going on, no one can really do anything. But
Yeah.
that was, I think, the off the court things that they taught me. Uh, at some point over the course of every week, I apply or catch myself saying something that Coach Bartow or Coach Anderson said to me over the course of my time with them. And so I'm very, very thankful to have had the opportunity to play for two really good men, better men than coaches, which is what you want.
Yeah. I'll get into a couple of personal questions, and then we'll get to the meat of what I'm sure everybody's wanting to hear about. But some on the personal side, and it might sound like a loaded question, but what is one thing people may misunderstand about you?
Uh, what is one thing they may misunderstand about me? I'm not sure. I think I'm fairly,
You keep it straightforward.
yeah, I think I'm fairly straightforward. Especially during my time at school, like I think I wore my emotions on my sleeves. Basketball really, really mattered to me.
Hmm.
And so, depending on the time that you met me, maybe I guess there's a slight chance that someone would say that I was, really, really, straightforward or narrow focused, I guess, which is not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
And I tell, I work with kids now. Um, and so I am always telling them, I don't want kids to feel the way about basketball I feel. I don't want them to do that because you hear guys say, oh, I eat, sleep, breathe. Like I literally, every decision I made over the course of, from the time I was 14 until, I don't know, I guess when I retired 5 years ago, up until that point, every decision like that, I made it based on how it would either hinder or help my basketball career. For example, as a child, I didn't learn how to skate because I
Hmm.
was afraid that I would hurt my ankle and wouldn't be able to play basketball. I couldn't swim. I didn't do anything that I thought would injure me or anything that would hinder me from playing. So I would think maybe if you met me along during that time, maybe someone would think, man, he's way super duper serious. Uh, but that nothing. I mean, I am serious about something that matters. But I think I'm a pretty straightforward, fun guy. I try to be fun. I think I'm funny. My wife says I'm not, but I think I'm pretty funny.
Uh, I think you're funny.
Yeah, you laugh.
Who have been the three most influential people in your life?
The three most influential people in my life. Uh, only three.
Only three. If
Only
you want to
three.
do another one, that's fine.
That's
I'll let
tough.
it
Three
slide.
is tough. Can I? Well, I tell you what. Can I lump my family in as one? Can I count them as one? My
Yeah.
mom, my dad, and my sisters. Like my mom and dad. My mom and my dad. There's no way to name just one,
Hmm.
just three, because obviously, my parents instilled in me uh, everything I am is because of them. My attitude towards people, um, my work ethic, all that can be attributed to my mom and my dad. Like there's no doubt about it. Um, in terms of basketball, my first basketball heroes, I'm from Lafayette. And so like it's not like the Atlanta Hawks were playing around the corner.
Yeah.
So everyone in that town, the high school guys were our heroes. And so
Hmm.
like my first basketball heroes were my uncles. My uncles uh, both played in high school and JUCO, and one uncle played at Montevallo. And so they were my heroes, man. Like I had youth coaches that were there in the city, like my brother-in-law, who was essentially my skills trainer before that was even a thing. My high school coach, like those people are, I say family. Like I can't separate
Hmm.
them in terms of like they all encompass my family. So that's one. I guess that's one.
Okay.
Uh, two more. My wife. My wife is now. Let me say this. My wife is not a basketball fan. And her favorite phrase, I met my wife my freshman year. Her favorite, one of the things she would always tell me is
Mhm.
that I'm not your fan. I'm not your fan more. Like my wife is like one of the people that calls me, I'm not your fan. I'm not your fan more. She would say that over and over and over. And I know it wasn't because, I had a big head or anything. That was just her way of letting me know that our relationship isn't based on anything except you and I. It's not based on what happens on the court, what happens off, what happens during the games, what happens great. She couldn't care less. She's not a fan. When I was in Europe, we would play games and I would look in the stands during critical moments and she'd be reading a book. Like my wife is just not. And I would always say, why aren't you watching? And she said, I trust you. I know you know what you're doing, so I don't have to watch and do all of that. And I was like, well, that's fair.
Yeah,
But my wife, she influences me, um, as you'll see soon enough, in ways that no one else can. And so every part of me now that is really good and really put together is a direct result of my relationship with her. And so she, like I said, she is definitely the influence that I needed in college and throughout my basketball career, my post basketball career, because she inspires me every day with just how she loves me and how she takes care of our home and our house and our family.
that's
So
awesome.
that's two. I got two. I guess she still could have been in the family, but that's a little different.
It's
Um,
all
the
right.
last person that inspires me is my son. I have a 6-year-old. His name's Brooks,
Mhm.
and he is everything I dream to be. And I don't know how to describe it, but like he is amazing in every way, man. Like he has taught me so much about like he my son has made me a better man, a better father, I mean a better husband, a better person. Like and all he does is exist. He doesn't do anything different. He doesn't do anything on purpose. He just
Mhm.
exists and he has a great personality and he's social and he lights up a room. And when I see him, that he makes me want to be better today than I was yesterday. And it sounds corny, and I'm sure it sounds cliche, and I'm sure, but it is the absolute truth. My son, uh, I tell him all the time. I say, man, you are the best thing I've ever done in my life. And if I had known he was going to be that powerful, that influential, I would have tried to get him here sooner. I'd probably be further along as a person if I'd have got him here 10 years ago as opposed to 6. So that's my three. I know it's a long three, man, but that's my
Yeah,
three.
I love them. Those are great answers. What's one thing that people may not know about you? People know the UAB player. People know the player that played overseas. What's one thing that people may not have seen while you were at UAB?
One thing that they didn't see, uh, I wear my emotions on my sleeves, as a player.
Hmm.
But I'm a fairly sensitive guy off the court too. When I was at school, I have two. Well, I have more than two nephews, but two that would always come to games. And they were like my kids before my son was my kid. And so if you want to get me to crying, you just flash a picture of one of them from UAB, or like if you get my nephews in the room with my son,
Hmm.
like at some point over the course of that time, like I'm probably gonna cry. Like that's just so that's something that people definitely may not know. I'm pretty sensitive when it comes to my family, but again, uh, I love hard. I make no apologies for it. The people that are my family, and that includes a lot. That's a pretty big group. I love them extremely hard, but those boys, my nieces and nephews, especially hard. So.
Awesome.
Well, that's something I hadn't told anybody out loud. My wife knows, but nobody else really knows.
Well, my listeners get to know that, so that's a treat for you guys listening. But
Yeah, Mo's a cry. Mo's a crybaby. Yes,
what do you wish you knew when you started at UAB?
I wish I knew it was going to go as quickly as it did. That's what I wish I knew. I wish, and again, like I was so focused on basketball, and the first year I spent the first year thinking that I was going to get sent home.
Hmm.
I remember thinking the scholarships are 1 year renewable.
Hmm.
I spent the first year thinking like, nobody knows me. And I remember having a meeting with a coach and he was like, you're from Lafayette, Alabama. Like nobody knows where that is. And I remember thinking like, he's right. And like, I have to prove to him that someone from Lafayette is worthy of being here like every day. And so, um, I made it my UAB mission. So it was my mission while I was at UAB to prove that I was worthy to be there every week. I mean, every year. but I wish I'd have had a little more fun because it did go by really quick.
Yeah.
Uh, it goes really, really quickly.
Yeah. What advice would you give to up and coming players in college?
I just tell them enjoy it. You got to enjoy it, man. Here's the thing: the game passes everyone by, and there's no guarantee you'll be able to play after college. There's no guarantee that you'll be able to play your entire college career. Injuries is that's one of the few things that you can't control, and so I think tons of times, now more so than ever, kids are really focused on themselves, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but it definitely takes away from their focus and their enjoyment on where they are at that particular moment. And so my suggestion or what I would advise every college kid to do now is to have as much fun as you can and really, really enjoy it because again, it's going to go just like that.
Yeah. And what advice would you have for guys just getting out of college?
Just getting out of college. Well, for the guys getting out, I think my advice would probably be better suited for guys that are not out, but about to be out in
Mm-hmm.
2 to 3 years. Like you have to have a plan formulated that you can kind of follow through on into again, because I mentioned like basketball is one of those things that you may not get a chance to play. Everyone wants to play after college. Everyone wants to play, no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't get a chance to play, like you have to have some sort of plan in place, and it has to be something that you choose that's connected to your purpose
Mm-hmm.
and to your passion. It can't just be something that you do just for money or just to make ends meet or just because then you'll be miserable. And then that's even worse than like there's nothing worse than going to a job or a career every day that you hate. And so I think sometimes, if you graduate, it may be too late to plan. Not too late, but you want things in place. I was a guy that I needed to know after this year that this is what's going to happen, sort of A to B to C, because that's just kind of how I'm wired. But my suggestion for guys and for young ladies as well, whatever you want your post basketball life to look like, start formulating a plan while you're still in your basketball life, so that way you can implement it as soon as your basketball life is over.
Okay. What was it like playing overseas?
Overseas was cool. It was like a paid vacation, um,
Really?
except you weren't on vacation. You actually had to go to work. And
Mm-hmm.
so in Europe, it was different because you have so much downtime to yourself. You practice for 4 hours, and now you still got 20 hours to kill. And so it was very serious. The basketball in Europe was if you could imagine being on a court outside in Harlem, maybe at the Rucker Park. If you lose, you don't play again. Well, in Europe, if you play poorly, you get cut. Like you could be coming into, leaving the airport and you're seeing you're passing your replacement as he's going, to baggage claims. I mean, it's very, very business-like in Europe, for lack of better. So it's very, very serious. It's not a for the faint of heart at all. But all in all, I think basketball is basketball, and if you like to compete, you want to give yourself an opportunity to play the game you love, provide for yourself and your family, you'll have a good time in Europe. And plus, the other part of it, and this is a part that I didn't enjoy as much as I should have, from a cultural standpoint, you get a chance to see all of the things that you've read about your whole life that you learned in school about. And so, like I lived in Italy for 4 years, and so my wife and her friends, they saw tons of stuff because they were always like they could had time. I was always at practice. I was always focused on the next game. And so I wish I had taken a little more time to kind of see more of the sites and sort of, I guess, dive into the culture a little more in the different places that I played.
I read in one of the in an old article I found online. It was an interview with you, and you mentioned that some of the one of the biggest adjustments you had to make was just learning how the refs call the game and how you know just the different pace of play and all that kind of stuff. And
It's terrible. The referees are. This is a separate question, but I've had people ask me all the time, "Are you interested in becoming a ref?" And I'm thinking to myself, refs are like the most hated people on earth. Like, there's no way. There's no amount of money you could pay me to become a ref. Um, the referees in Europe, God, they were awful. Some of them were so bad. The rules were different. For example, in Greece, it was very, very physical. They could grab you, they could hold you, they could push you, and the ref would look at you and just, guy knocks you down. The ref sees you stumble, he says travel. When in everywhere, even on the moon, it's a foul. But
Mm.
in Greece, in Athens, that's not a foul. In Spain, the play was up tempo, fast break. In France, lots of up tempo play. Uh, in Belgium, it was a little different. In Italy, it was very tactical. I mean, that was the cool part. So for me, getting a chance to get exposed to different styles of play, because I love basketball. I love every part of it, and so um, I tried to learn as much as I could from everybody and from every country.
Okay. And one last question about the overseas thing. I did also read that you had the chance to play former UAB guard Squeaky Johnson in one game too.
Yeah.
What was that like?
You know what? That was pretty cool, man, because we were in Belgium at the time, and so it's so crazy. I ended up hanging out more with Squeaky and his teammates than I did with my own teammates. And so after games, like it was in Belgium. Belgium is like the ideal place to go play in Europe for your first couple of years because everything is really close. And so I think the furthest trip was maybe 3 hours. And so Squeaky, like I would go to Squeaky's house for hair. Squeaky is or was a barber. I don't know if he cuts hair now. But so we used to go to Squeaky's house to get our hair cut. Like me and my teammates from my team. Um, so it's about 25 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. Like Squeaky and I, we went to Germany together. Like we hung out that year he played in Belgium more. I hung out with him more than I hung out with my own teammates. And I had a great relationship with my teammates, obviously. But Squeaky and his teammates, it was very strange. They're like, man, how can you hang out with these guys? Like we're playing against them in 2 weeks. How can you go over here and have dinner with them? I'm like, once we step on the court, like Squeaky's gonna try to steal the ball from me, and I'm gonna
Mhm.
try to score on him. And after it's over, we're gonna hug and we're gonna go to dinner, and that's gonna be it. But uh, that was probably one of the best times I've had on the court, getting a chance to play against one of my teammates over there. That was a fun time, man. I don't think I ever played against another teammate. I did not. Donnell came to one game. I saw Donnell he was in the stands at one game.
Hmm.
I was in Italy. Very, very. That was a very cool deal with me and Squeak, though.
So how's life now?
It's pretty good, man. I'm home. I'm in Alabama every day, which was, I guess that's in no other place you'd rather be than home. I have a son here, like I mentioned earlier, who inspires me every day. My wife is here with the honeydew list. I have my own business, One Finley Way Sports, where I do basketball skills training for kids of all ages. We have several travel teams that didn't get to travel this year, obviously because of COVID-19.
Mhm.
So I'm close to the game. I'm able to stay close to. I'm in the gym every day, and like I can't complain. Like that's for me, that's the best. I couldn't imagine being anywhere else than in a gym over the course of the day. So it's pretty good, man.
What's your go-to happy place?
Anywhere, like a physical place. Does it have to be outside of my home or
Sure.
outside of my home? There aren't a lot of places I go. I'm a homebody. I spend so much time away from home. So my happy place, I guess, man, anywhere. And I mentioned anywhere that my family is. That's my happy place, man. My family, my friends, and my son is very similar. He loves to have people over, and so imagine, with COVID, nobody can come over. Nobody. We can't go to a barbecue. We can't do anything in our house. Whenever we grill out, his first question is, "Who's coming over here?" Like nobody's coming today, but we got COVID's going on. But my happy place, man, I'm happiest when I have my friends, my family, and my friends. Well, my family, because my friends are my family. That's my happy place, man. Anywhere we are, that's my happy place.
So how can my listeners engage with you now?
How can they can follow me on Instagram? I'm pretty boring, but they can follow me anyway. Uh, at MoFin10 on Instagram and also at One Finley Way Sports. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. It's Mo Finley and also Morris Finley. I don't know how that happened, but it happened. Uh, and so they can engage with me there. If they have kids or anyone who's interested in becoming a better basketball player, they can find me at www.onefinleyway.com. That's our website. You can go and look around, look at some old pictures of me when I played at UAB when I was a little younger. Some overseas pictures and just kind of they can dig around and find a little information in regards to all that we're doing now with our teams and with the training.
Okay. All right. So transitioning back to basketball now. One of the games that I remember personally, my dad and I made the trip over to Starkville, and it actually ended up being your best statistical game at UAB. Let's see, you had 38 points at Mississippi State on December 6, 2003. Third best behind two ties ahead of you. Third best performance in UAB history. What was it like that day? You were on fire, obviously, but
Yeah, you know what? That was a pretty good day. And so I spent a lot of time in Starkville as a high school sophomore, junior. My brother, as I may have mentioned earlier, my brother-in-law was the grad assistant. Oh, I don't maybe I didn't mention. He's a grad assistant at Mississippi State during their 1996 during their Final Four run. Played a few years there. He's an assistant coach there now. And so he was my skills trainer before those were even a thing. And so I would spend the summers working out in Starkville. And so I went to individual camp back when you could still go to the camps and stuff. Um, and I thought for a second that they would offer me. I thought for a brief moment in time that they may offer me. And they didn't. They did not offer me, obviously. And so I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder because of that, because I spent so much time there. And again, as a young guy, you realize that, well, as a young guy, you don't realize everything that goes into those types of decisions. And now that I'm older, I understand, like, you never know who a kid they've been recruiting for years or anything. You just stuff that, for whatever reason, it didn't work out. And so that day, during the warm-ups, I remember we were warming up and the fans were kind of jeering early. I think we were near the students, had to be students because older people would have done that. They were jeering a lot. And so, I was making all my shots in warm-up. I felt really good. And this was a place that I had been in my life before. So it wasn't a place that was unfamiliar.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that I was able to do when I was over in Starkville when I was in high school, I was able to play pickup sometimes with the team.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew a lot of their players, a lot of their older players that played, late 90s. I didn't play against any of them, but they were freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors when I was a sophomore in high school, junior. So I knew those guys. And so I felt like it didn't feel like an away game. It felt like a game in a place where I had been before. But once the game got started, I mean, it was just like I was ready to show them that they made a really big mistake. And the year before, I played not great. I didn't play great the year before. They beat us at home.
Yeah.
And they beat us at home, and we played poorly. And I remember pressing and trying too hard. But that day, Coach Anderson, he would always say, "Let it come to you. Let the game come to you. Let the game come to you." And so I just kind of replayed that over and over in my mind. So I was really relaxed before the game. And one of the things that sticks out the most in the second half, Sidney Ball was open in the corner, and I missed him. And I ended up taking a tough layup that didn't go in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one thing I think about throughout. Whenever I think back to the game, I think about, like, man, like Sidney was by himself in the corner. Like, maybe if he makes that one, that changes the whole, complexion of the game. And we still had a lead even after that happened. But that's one of the plays I wish I could get back from that day. Obviously, Lawrence Roberts, great player. And so once they threw that ball inside to him, we had an opportunity to win. That is a game that we should have won.
Yeah.
Because we played better that day. That was a game we should have won, without a doubt.
My dad still to this day, he still talks about some of the great memories that he has as a UAB fan, and he said that you played with your hair on fire that day. He said he that's one of the few, and he's been around since day one. And he says that was one of the best performances he's ever seen as a UAB fan.
I remember in the first half, like the fans, they were kind of ragging me a little bit for a while, and then they got to a point in the first half where they stopped cheering against me, and that's when I was like, okay, like when they're no longer cheering against you, they weren't clapping for me, but they weren't booing me and saying stuff anymore either. So I was like, okay, we got it going a little bit today, and I wish we could have won. Like, that would have been, right up there with the other wins. But tough break, man.
Yeah. Fast forward to the end of the season, you guys fall in the second game of the Conference USA tournament to DePaul in overtime.
Yeah, I remember that.
What you want to talk about that?
I just remember, I remember being really tired, physically tired during the game.
Mm-hmm.
And DePaul was one of those teams. They had really good players individually.
Mm-hmm.
Delonte Holland, Andre Brown. They had great guys. Um, and it was just, I thought we were the better team um, in terms of, playing together.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, we just that day it was just tough that day. It was a tough deal, and that's the one time in the conference tournament I felt like we let I felt like we had kind of just let everybody down a little bit with our performance.
Mm. Well, you guys lost, but did you guys have a good feeling about getting into the NCAA tournament, or how were you guys feeling?
Well, the thing is, I had never we'd never been, and so you didn't really know if they were going to say okay or not. I felt like we were one of the best teams in our conference. I felt like if you let Cincinnati in, you got to let us in. If you let Memphis in, you got because we were essentially tied for the Conference USA title.
Mm-hmm.
So the regular season, I felt like we had already played all those same teams. We beat a lot of those teams. If they deserve to get in, we deserve to get in too. But I don't remember feeling like it was a sure thing because like that again, I had never experienced it before. So for me, I was doing everything, hoping and praying like everybody else.
So you do get in. First round, you get to play the Washington Huskies, who had four future NBA players on it, including Nate Robinson and Brandon Roy.
Yeah.
What was the Washington game like?
You know what, the Washington game, uh, I remember Washington got the tip,
Mm-hmm.
and Squeaky stole the ball from Nate Robinson and laid it up and started shaking his hair. And I remember thinking, yeah, it's gonna be a good day. It's gonna be a good night. But again, uh, they were so talented, man. Like Brandon Roy, it was like he was in a car and we were all on bikes. Like that's how it felt. And Nate Robinson was really good, obviously, but
Mm-hmm.
Roy was the guy that just made them go. And they had, other guys on their team as well, like Will Conroy. Like he was a tough guy to guard. They had good guys, Bobby Jones. Uh, they had such a good team, and so beating them, to be honest, that game was way tougher than Kentucky. That game was tougher than Kentucky, man.
Really? Hmm.
Oh, it ain't close.
The score. I mean, the score shows that it was. I mean, it was tough. It was 102-100, but
Yeah, and I missed probably 8 free throws. Like I missed so many free throws that day. And Demario Edmonds, he played really well. Demario saved us that
mm-hmm.
day. He made tons of plays, tons of free throws. And I remember thinking, thank God, because I think getting me off the hook, man. Because I shot it poorly and I had missed a ton of free throws. I was thinking, Demario, get me off the hook, pick me up. I remember telling him that several times because he was like, hey man, pick me up, and he
He
did.
bailed you out.
Was an amazing player, and so he did a really good job too.
Awesome. So, of course, game everybody wants to talk about. 2 days later, you get number one overall seed Kentucky. What was it like before the game? And let's just go over were there butterflies before the game?
No,
How would,
not really.
no, okay.
No, not really. I remember. I mean, you're nervous, but it's not like that.
It's a hype feeling.
Yeah, it's more, but it's almost like a calm before the storm. And so I remember our hotel ride was it was a short ride to the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember looking out the window and just seeing like a sea of blue because everybody's a Kentucky fan. But I was really, really calm about it. I just remember having a sense of calm the whole time. And I would always go back into the locker room before, like I'd come out with the team, I'd go back. So I went back in, and Coach Anderson was there today. And so I was, he told me, like, I know you were pressing and trying really hard the first night. Because, I mean, you want to go well, you want to play well, because now it's win or go home, literally.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, just be patient tonight. He said, it'll come to you. He said, use your pump fake. And I said, okay. He actually told me that before the game. I went back out and I said, okay. And then Sydney, you're ready to tip it off. Sydney left his shirt. Leaves his jersey in the locker room. He has to go back to the locker room to get his jersey. And so, I remember making the first jumper.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, just a good feeling. Another part was they only played seven or eight guys. So they didn't play a lot of guys. And I thought that would be our advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember during the second half, I remember Cliff Hawkins, their starting point guard. There was like I don't know, I can't remember. They called timeout. There was a meeting. I think maybe they called timeout. They were subbing. And he looked over and he said, "Hey man, I'm tired."
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, "Oh, we got him. He's
Mm-hmm.
tired. We got him."
So
Well,
you guys led 42-33 at half. What was the locker room like at halftime?
I don't. We were. Here's the thing. Like it sounds bad to say, but like we weren't shocked that we were winning. Like we thought we were a good team. Like we weren't out there playing Sam Bowie and Rex Chapman. Like you're not playing. Like you're not. No offense to those guys that were on the team, but you're not playing. The history of Kentucky basketball. You're
Mm-hmm.
not playing Rupp Arena plus the Raptors plus. Like that's not what you're playing against. Those guys out there in that jersey. They got 7 guys, 8 guys that are playing a lot of minutes. Like those are the guys you're playing against. And
Mm-hmm.
once you realize that you're not that, what they've done historically in the past, like Mashburn ain't coming out there. So I mean, you can kind of relax a little bit, and like once you like, we can match up with him. We match up okay with him.
Mm-hmm.
We got to do X, Y, Z with this guy, but we just got to continue. And then you feel okay. Well, like at the end of the day, like now it's just us doing what we know we can do, and it goes however it goes.
Okay. So Kentucky storms back, and you
Yeah.
guys have one of the more memorable plays in school history with Ronell to Donnell
Yeah.
pass. So what was that play like in that moment?
Oh, man, I was on the bench, and so when he stole it, like here's the thing, they would throw the ball to each other all the time, and they could always find each other on the floor. Like even when if one of them wasn't open and the other one threw it to him, he'd still catch it. Like you
Mm-hmm.
could be standing in the passing lane and he's throwing it to Donnell throwing, and they still. I mean, I guess that's just part of being a twin. I don't know. And so it didn't surprise me one bit. I don't know that he knew he was throwing it to Donnell. I don't know that he knew that. I know he saw a green shirt, but
Uh-huh.
I don't know that he knew it was his brother. When it happened, man, I just remember jumping up and down. And like if you see the video now, you look back like, man, that looks terrible, man. Like how corny are you? But like you're so excited, and it truly turns like March is is the only time of year that you will see guys. They're just rooting, I guess unashamed and cheer. Like they just you
Mhm.
want to win so bad.
Yeah.
You don't care what happens. You don't care how it happens. You're excited. And so you get guys on the sideline that I don't know if I've ever jumped up on the bench in my life and cheered as hard as I cheered for a dunk that was truthfully not his best dunk in the world. Like it was just a regular dunk, but it
Mhm.
was just a moment and
Yeah.
uh, the stage, and so it was such a big deal. And Derek Broom and Lee Cobb, they're over there throwing towels and having a ball, and so we had it was such fun that everyone was a part of, and so man, that was probably like one of the most exciting moments throughout about that game. Man.
Awesome. We talked about the play, or we talked about the pass. Now let's talk about the the shot, as Blazer fans want to call it. But
Yeah, man. We prior to, I guess I can't remember the score. We were down two, I think, if I'm not mistaken. We were down two, and we ran a little play to kind of get me a shot on the baseline, and I made a three, and then we came back, and that's when Azubuike had the put back tip dunk.
mm-hmm.
And so now we're down one,
Mm-hmm.
and we ran the same play again, but they were on at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and I threw it to Squeak, and I followed him because I knew Squeak, his mindset was I'm gonna try to get it to someone else's score. Like Squeak didn't want to score. He didn't really want to shoot. If you saw him, it was only because he had to. Like he rarely would take a shot. Um, but so I followed my pass a little bit because I knew like if Squeak gets in trouble, he's gonna come right back to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just made a three, and the guy's closing. And so my first thought was just show him the ball. The clock's winding down, show him the ball. He took it, and it worked out almost like Coach Anderson, like he knew what he was talking. Use your pump fake. And I think maybe, I don't know if I pump fake anymore during that whole game, but that one time. And so, pump fake, one dribble, a shot I had probably taken, I don't know, man, maybe a million times in my life. And it went right in. And I remember thinking, get back on D,
Mm-hmm.
because they're getting ready to come right back at us, get back on D. And then they called timeout, and then we got a chance to celebrate for a second.
Mm-hmm. one of the biggest things, of course, in the final seconds. They get the shot, they get a rebound, they get it, try and tip it back up, doesn't go, tip back again, doesn't go again. And we saw it on TV, but what was the flood of emotions like in that moment?
You know what, man? Because I was actually like I was subbed out. I was subbed
Mm-hmm.
out, and
Yep.
so like I was literally over there on the ground praying. Like
Mm-hmm.
and people say, "Man, why were you on the?" I said, "Well, here's the thing." I said, "Whenever like there's something that's really concerning you, for me, like I don't know what anybody else does, but I go to my source, and so like that was my first thought. I was like I wasn't ashamed, I wasn't embarrassed. I'm like I'm going to pray, and I didn't pray that they missed. I did. That's not what I prayed.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just thankful for everything that we'd experienced, and I wanted to make sure in that moment that I expressed that. And I was like, you know what? Thank you. Like thank you. I believe we were going to win, and so um, I got there and I prayed. And so once I didn't hear the crowd explode, I knew we won because everyone there was Kentucky. And so when I didn't hear the crowd, then a couple people grabbed me and of course, like I'm crying, like looking like a true chump. And the guy was like, "Man, what happened? Why'd you?" I said, "Man, have you ever had your prayers answered on national TV? Have you ever?" The guy was like, "No." I said, "You cry too." And so we laughed about it, but it was just such an exciting time for my family and our fans. And I remember, finding my dad and my mom and my nephews and my sisters and everybody in the stands and giving them a thumbs up. Because I mean, for me, it was a big deal. I felt like everyone in the city was with us. I felt like everyone in my hometown was with us. And so for me, that was the perfect ending to that day.
Okay. I got a couple of questions for you
Yeah.
here from my listeners. Let's go to Twitter here. First question I've got is from Mike Rowe at Blazer Rowe. He asks, that shot against Kentucky, did you know it was good when it left your hands? And what was the original progression of shots? And he elaborated on that and he said, was the shot planned, or were there progressions in the play? And was there another player that had the green light to shoot if open?
I don't know if anybody else had the green light, but I figured if I had my hands, I probably was going to shoot it.
Mhm.
Like I said, I mentioned earlier, we ran a play to get a three on the baseline, and so it worked previously, but so that was the original intent. Let's try to see if we can get another one the same way. And so when that didn't happen, after that wasn't so much a natural progression. It was just us just sort of playing off of each other. Just kind of you just playing basketball at that point. You're trying to look for an opportunity to make a play and squeak drove, didn't have anything, kicked it back to me, and then you're just playing basketball. Now I will say this: when it leaves my hands, I think it's going in, and I that is something that I probably have always thought. Even when they were shots that probably weren't going in, I thought it was going in. If I let it go, I think it's going in. So to answer his question, yeah, I thought it was good.
This comes from Russell Brisale or Brisale. I apologize, Russell, if you're listening to this and I put your last name, but his Twitter is at RussBus11. He asks, who was the toughest dude to defend back in the old Conference USA? And does Mo think UAB will ever go to another conference?
The toughest
So,
guy to be in the old Conference USA, the guy that sticks out the most, is a guy named Junior Blunt that played at TCU. He was very, very quick, great scorer. He was hard to guard. Damon Brown at Charlotte, Brandon Plavich at Charlotte. Those guys were really, really hard to guard because their lights were greener than mine, and so they would shoot it whenever they felt like it.
mhm.
Uh, those for me personally, those were the toughest guys to guard. And Antonio Burks was as well. He was really fast and just a phenomenal player. And he was really tough too.
Okay. And do you think UAB is ever going to go to another conference?
You know, man, I hope so. If that
Hmm.
gives us a better chance, like I don't want us to have to win our conference tournament every year to
Hmm.
be in the tournament. I mean, that's just the thing is you can go 30-0 and then you have, one bad weekend. You have a bye that first game, and then all of a sudden you lose. I mean, it happened to us a few years ago. Best
Hmm.
record in school history. And so I think for us, until we're able to play, until we're able to establish ourselves, in such a way where we get the benefit of the doubt, I think another conference is probably really beneficial. How that works, I don't know. That's above my pay grade.
Mm-hmm.
But I would love to see us in the conference with. I'd love to see us in another conference.
Okay. And last question I'll do from my listeners. This comes from John Valinkis at JBall2001. He asks, please ask Mo if he played Mike Hill one-on-one, who would win? He
Do you
said,
know
I think he would. I think this question will make his day. So what you got, Mo?
what? I'm sorry. I apologize. I interrupted. What was the question?
He said, please ask Mo if he played Mike Hill one-on-one, who would win? I think this would make his day. That's what he said.
If Mike Hill and I played right now today, one on one, you know what? I think Mike Hill might get me today.
Really?
Yep. I'm tired. I've had a long day, man. I think Mike Hill's retired. He definitely he's well rested, man. So he has the upper hand. Mike Hill probably would get me today. Mike Hill is the ultimate fan, man. He's a great guy. I met him when I was in college, and he loves UAB, like very few people, man. So I'm glad that I know Mike Hill is. Hopefully he'll hear this. And Mike, if you can find me before 12 o'clock, you got to win today. But if any other time, I don't know.
And last question I got for you, and I'm gonna try and do every podcast like this for my listeners. I'm just gonna do one lighthearted question just to keep it,
All right.
keep my guest on their toes and not something that's so black and white with sports. But what's your favorite movie?
My favorite movie. Ooh, I love movies, man. My favorite movie. That's too hard. I don't have a favorite movie.
Don't have a favorite movie. All
I
right,
don't.
well,
I am. I can tell you my favorite TV show right now.
do it.
This Is Us is my favorite TV show.
I can respect that.
This Is Us is my favorite show, man.
Okay.
Very well written. It tells me, like I said, doesn't take much for me to cry, man. When I cry once a week watching This Is Us, so that's my favorite show. Favorite movie, man. I don't know. That's too tough.
All right. Well, that's all right. I can still respect This Is Us for the TV answer. So, but Mo, thank you very much for joining me, and be sure to thank your wife for me keeping you this long, and your son. So go and enjoy the rest of your night. Hopefully it's not bedtime just yet, but if it is, I'm sorry for keeping you up late. But thank you again for being on, and it's been a tremendous pleasure. So thank you for being my first.
Thanks for having me, man. Thanks for having me.
Mo Finley, UAB guard from 1999 to 2004, my first guest on the Dragon's Den. I want to thank Mo for joining me, and I want to thank you for taking the time to listen. This is probably going to be one of my longer episodes, so I hope you made it to the end and got to learn a lot more about Mo Finley that you didn't know before. I know we had some static a few times in the episode, so I will do my best to take out any static that I can. But if you can hear it, I apologize, and I'll try to work on it for my next guest. This was my first time using my call recording software for an extended amount of time, so I'm kind of on a trial and error level right now. But once again, thank you guys for listening in. I really hope you enjoyed. If you haven't done so, go follow or like the Dragon's Den on Facebook or Twitter. You can find it at Dragon's Den EFEL. Once again, that's at Dragon's Den EFEL. Find out if the Dragon's Den is on your favorite streaming platform. Participate in Q&As and see who my next guest is going to be for episode 2. So, once again, thanks for listening. Good night and go Blazers.